Hello, and welcome to our channel. My name is Umair Malik, and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you subscribe the channel for more content like this. It's 100% free. 12 ugly habits in aging that everyone notices, but no one mentions. Have you ever wondered if you're doing things that quietly push people away, but no one dares to tell you? As we grow older, we begin to settle into certain habits. Some are comforting, even wise, but others can turn into blind spots. You might think you're simply being yourself, but the truth is, the people around you notice, and while they may not say anything, those habits can quietly impact how you're perceived by family, friends, and even strangers. In this article, we're going to uncover 12 ugly things you might be doing in old age that everyone notices but no one tells you. And I don't mean ugly in the physical sense. I'm talking about the kinds of behaviors that slowly wear down your dignity, isolate you from others, and chip away at the grace and respect you've earned over a lifetime. Each of these signs will challenge you to reflect, not to judge yourself harshly, but to gently hold a mirror up and say, is this still serving me, or is it pushing people away? And here's the good news. Most of these habits are completely fixable. The first step is simply becoming aware. By the end of this article, you'll not only know what to look out for, but also how to carry yourself with more confidence, clarity, and grace in your later years. So stay with me until the end, because you may realize that a few small changes could make a big difference in how others experience you and, more importantly, how you experience yourself. Let's begin. Neglecting personal hygiene. One of the first things people silently pick up on, but rarely mention, is when someone stops taking care of their hygiene. And I'm not talking about major neglect either. It's the little things. Wearing clothes that look like they've been worn 3 days in a row, hair that hasn't been brushed, fingernails that go just a little too long, a faint odor that lingers a bit too long after you leave the room. These may seem small, but they speak volumes. See, hygiene isn't just about cleanliness. It's about how we carry ourselves. In our younger years, we usually maintain these habits without even thinking. But as we get older, energy wanes, routines change, and some people start to feel like, what's the point? That shift is subtle, but the people around you notice. They may not tell you outright because they don't want to embarrass you, especially younger family members. They don't know how to bring it up without hurting your feelings. So instead, they simply adjust. They sit a little farther away, they shorten the visit, they stop initiating hugs. But what they're really reacting to isn't you, it's the message your self-care is sending. It tells them you've given up a little, that maybe you don't value yourself as much as you once did. And here's the part no one says out loud. When you stop taking care of yourself, people unconsciously stop treating you with the same level of warmth and respect. Now, this doesn't mean you have to dress like a fashion model or wear cologne every day, but a fresh shirt, clean hair, and trim nails go a long way. They tell the world, I'm still here, I still care, I still respect myself and you. The truth is, people respond to your energy before they respond to your words, and hygiene is one of the clearest reflections of that energy. When you take care of yourself, it quietly invites others to treat you with kindness, closeness, and dignity. And that's a message worth sending. Speaking without a filter. As we age, something curious tends to happen. The inner voice that once said, maybe don't say that out loud, gets a little quieter and sometimes disappears altogether. You start speaking your mind more freely, maybe even proudly, thinking, I've earned the right to say whatever I want. And while that may feel liberating, the people around you often feel something very different, discomfort. You see, there's a fine line between honesty and bluntness, and over time, maybe if you find yourself saying things that make people pause, shift in their chairs, or avoid eye contact, it might be a sign that what's coming out isn't just truth, it's harshness. Maybe you've caught yourself making remarks about someone's weight, appearance, relationship, or even how they're raising their kids. Maybe you've brushed it off with a chuckle and said, I'm just being honest. Or, back in my day, we weren't so sensitive. But here's the reality. Honesty without compassion just sounds like criticism, and the people on the receiving end, they rarely tell you. They just start pulling back. You'll notice they stop inviting you to certain gatherings, or they don't stay on the phone as long. They love you, but they're trying to protect themselves from the sting of those small, careless remarks. Now, this doesn't mean you need to censor every word or walk on eggshells, but it does mean pausing before you speak and asking, is this helpful? Is this kind? Because sometimes, what feels like speaking your truth is actually just releasing frustration, and it lands harder than you realize. A good rule of thumb. If you wouldn't want someone saying it to your grandchild, maybe don't say it to someone else's. The beauty of growing older is the wisdom you carry, And when that wisdom is wrapped in kindness, people lean in, they listen, they respect you deeply. But when it comes coated in sarcasm or judgment, they start tuning out, even if your intentions are good. Wearing clothes that don't fit anymore, there's a certain comfort in routines. Eating the same breakfast, walking the same path, wearing the same clothes you've had for years. And there's nothing wrong with consistency, but when it comes to clothing, what once looked classic can, over time, begin to feel careless. You may not notice it yourself, but the way your clothes fit, or don't, says a lot about how connected you are to the present moment. Pants that hang too loose, shirts that cling too tight, outdated styles from 20 years ago, or shoes that have long since lost their shape. These aren't just fashion choices. They quietly send a message that you've stopped paying attention, and while no one will come out and say it, they notice. It's not about following trends or trying to dress like someone half your age. It's about showing the world that you still see yourself as someone worth looking after. When people see an older adult in clothing that fits well, looks cared for, and reflects a sense of self-respect, they feel something instantly: admiration. It tells them this person still shows up in the world, not out of vanity, but dignity. Think about it. Would you wear the same suit to a job interview that you wore 25 years ago? Probably not. The same principle applies to everyday life. Our bodies change, our coloring shifts, and our energy evolves. Dressing in a way that reflects your current self, not your past, shows emotional presence and self-awareness. Now, I've heard some folks say, "What do I care what people think? I'm comfortable." And that's fair, but being comfortable and being dismissive aren't the same. You can be comfortable and put together. You can be relaxed and respectful of your appearance. Interrupting or dominating conversations, we all want to be heard, especially in our later years when we've lived through enough experiences to know a thing or two. But sometimes, in that desire to share what we know, or to make sure our point is clear, we forget to leave room for others. It can start subtly. You're in a conversation, and someone brings up a topic you've dealt with before. You jump in. You offer a story. You start explaining what they should do. Before you know it, 10 minutes have passed, and no one else has spoken. What's tricky about this habit is that it doesn't come from a bad place. Most of the time, it's rooted in a genuine desire to help. But here's the problem. When we take up too much conversational space, we unintentionally silence the very people we care about, and they won't tell you that you're doing it. Instead, they'll start drifting away. They'll stop calling as often. They'll keep conversations shorter. You'll feel the distance, but you won't always know where it came from. People want to feel seen and heard, not lectured. And when every conversation starts to feel like a one-way street, it quietly wears down the relationship, especially with younger adults or grandchildren who already may feel a little unsure of how to connect with someone from another generation. It's not about saying less. It's about listening more, letting there be pauses, asking more questions than you answer, and resisting the urge to jump in with advice unless it's asked for. One of the most powerful things an older person can do in a conversation is to hold back just enough to let others fully express themselves, not because you don't have something wise to say, but because they need to know that what they say matters too. And here's the irony. The less you dominate the conversation, the more people seek your input. The more you listen, the more they trust you. You become someone they want to talk to, not someone they feel they have to brace for. Complaining about kids these days, it starts as a simple observation. You see a teenager glued to their phone and think, back in my day, we actually talked to each other. You hear someone in their 30s making a decision you disagree with and think they have no idea how the real world works. And before you know it, these thoughts start slipping out in conversations with friends, with family, even with strangers. You may not realize it, but when you constantly criticize younger generations, it sends a powerful and often damaging message. It tells the people around you, especially your children and grandchildren, that you're not interested in understanding them, that you're stuck in a time that no longer exists. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. Every generation thinks the one coming up behind them is missing something. That's nothing new. But when that criticism becomes your default, it doesn't make people see you as wise. It makes them see you as bitter. You might mean it as a joke. You might think you're just pointing out the obvious. But to the people hearing it, especially those under 50, it often feels like rejection, like you're dismissing their entire world, their values, their way of life. And the result? They stop opening up. They keep things light. They avoid deeper conversations because they're bracing for judgment. Even when they love you, they start keeping a part of themselves at a distance. Now, that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything younger folks do. It doesn't mean you have to embrace every new trend or idea. But what it does mean is choosing curiosity over criticism, asking instead of assuming. When you shift from saying, "These kids today have it easy," to asking, "What's it like trying to find your way in this world?" Now you open the door to connection. You create space for dialogue, not division. Ignoring modern etiquette, there's a kind of social awareness that often goes unnoticed until it's not there. Things like speaking loudly on your phone in public, standing too close in line, or playing a video without headphones in a waiting room. Small behaviors, sure, but they can have a big impact on how others perceive you. Now, these things might not have been a big deal decades ago. Back then, people were more tolerant of loud conversations or unexpected behavior. But times change, expectations shift, and what used to be considered harmless now makes people quietly uncomfortable. And here's the tricky part. You may not even realize you're doing it. No one pulls you aside and says, "Hey, could you turn that down? Or do you mind stepping back a little?" Instead, they'll give you a look, or avoid eye contact, or move to another seat. It's not personal, but it is real. And whether it's on the subway, in a coffee shop, or even just walking through a store, these little breaches of what people now consider common courtesy send a message. They say, "I'm not aware of how I affect others." And the truth is, people don't always give older adults the benefit of the doubt. They often assume you should know better. So when they see these behaviors, they don't chalk it up to misunderstanding, they chalk it up to disregard. That's not the legacy you want to leave. And fortunately, it's one of the easiest things to fix. Start noticing how people around you behave in public spaces, how they manage their volume, how they navigate personal space, how they engage with technology when others are around. Modern etiquette isn't about being uptight. It's about being considerate. It shows that you're still tuned into the world, still engaged, still aware of the impact you have on others. And that awareness, it builds respect. It tells people, I may be older, but I'm still someone who pays attention, someone who adapts, someone who cares about how others feel. Oversharing medical problems, we've all heard the joke. Get a few older folks together, and the conversation turns into a contest of who's got the worst knee, the highest blood pressure, or the most medications lined up on the bathroom shelf. And while it may seem like harmless talk, or even a way to relate, constantly bringing up your health issues can slowly wear down the energy of those around you. Here's the thing. Everyone knows that getting older comes with its fair share of physical challenges. You don't have to pretend everything's perfect. But when your conversations always circle back to what hurts, what the doctor said, or what's next on the surgery list, people start to feel like they're in a waiting room, not a relationship. Especially for younger family members, these topics can feel overwhelming. They may not know how to respond, or they may feel helpless hearing about things they can't fix. So instead of leaning in, they back away, not out of disrespect, but out of quiet exhaustion. You deserve empathy. You deserve to be heard. But when that becomes the centerpiece of how you relate to others, it changes the dynamic. It shifts from connection to caretaking, from conversation to complaint. Think about the people you enjoy being around. Chances are, they're not the ones who list every ache and pill they take. They're the ones who focus on what's still good. The ones who might mention a challenge but don't let it define the moment. Now, does that mean you should hide your struggles? Not at all. But choose your audience, choose your timing, and more importantly, choose balance. Share how you're doing. Yes, but also ask others how they're doing. Talk about the book you're reading, the neighbor's garden, the bird you saw out your window. Because your life is still full of stories that aren't just medical charts, and people want to connect with you, not just your symptoms. You might be surprised how much lighter your relationships feel when you stop letting being stubborn about outdated beliefs. One of the hardest things to notice in ourselves, especially as we age, is when our beliefs start turning into walls instead of windows. We hold on to ideas that once served us well, principles that shaped how we raised our families, ran our businesses, and made sense of the world. But over time, if we're not careful, those beliefs can harden into absolutes that no longer reflect the world we're living in now. You might find yourself saying things like, "That's just how it is," or "People are too sensitive these days," or "I don't care what the science says, I know what's right." And while you may feel confident in your views, what others often hear is something very different: resistance. The truth is, the world has changed, and it's still changing. Technology, culture, gender roles, mental health awareness, the way we communicate, it's all evolving fast. And when we dig our heels in and refuse to even consider another perspective, it doesn't come across as wisdom. It comes across as unwillingness. Younger generations notice this, and again, they usually won't confront you directly. But inside, they quietly label you as someone they can't talk to about certain things, someone who won't understand, someone who doesn't want to. And that's a real loss. Because whether it's your grandchild questioning traditional careers or your neighbor living a lifestyle you don't fully understand, there's so much connection possible when curiosity replaces judgment. Now, Staying open doesn't mean you abandon your values. It means you're willing to update your understanding without compromising who you are. It means making room at the table for new ideas, even if you don't agree with all of them. And here's something else. Stubbornness often hides fear of losing relevance, fear of being left behind, fear that if we let go of old beliefs, we lose a piece of ourselves. Walking or moving without awareness of space as we age, our pace changes. We slow down a little. We might feel less steady or more cautious with our steps, and that's completely natural. But what often happens without us realizing it is that we become less aware of how our movements affect the people around us. You've probably seen it. Someone standing in the middle of a grocery aisle, cart sideways, completely blocking the way while scanning a label. Or someone stopping suddenly in a busy walkway, lost in thought. Or walking with a friend and slowly drifting into the path of oncoming foot traffic. Most of the time, these things happen without bad intent. You're not trying to be inconsiderate, you're simply focused on your own task. But to the people around you, especially those in a hurry or navigating tight spaces, it feels like friction, like you're creating small obstacles that make their day a little harder. And here's the key part. People rarely say anything. They just sigh, walk around you, maybe give a quick glance, and carry on. But over time, these small moments add up in how others perceive you. They might start to see you as that person who's always in the way. Or they may silently decide to avoid situations where they'd have to walk beside you, shop with you, or navigate public spaces together. Not because they don't like you, but because they feel like they have to manage you. Now, I want to be clear. Slowing down is not the problem. The issue is awareness. You can move slowly and still be respectful of space. You can pause to read something and still keep to one side. You can walk carefully while being mindful of the flow around you. This is especially important in places like airports, busy sidewalks, malls, or even church hallways. These are shared spaces, and being considerate in them sends a strong message that you're still paying attention, that you still care about how you impact others. Making jokes that don't age well. A good sense of humor is one of the best things you can carry into old age. It keeps you light, keeps others comfortable, and helps ease tension in even the hardest moments. But not all humor ages gracefully, and some jokes, especially the ones that once got a laugh decades ago, can quietly push people away today. You might be joking the way you always have. A little sarcasm here, a teasing remark there, maybe a comment that plays off old stereotypes or pokes fun at someone's background, appearance, or choices. You might even laugh as you say it and follow up with, "I'm just messing with you," or "Come on, lighten up." But here's what's changed. The world around you. While humor used to rely on poking fun at differences, today people are far more sensitive to how words land, especially when they come from someone older. Younger folks especially are navigating a culture that emphasizes inclusion, empathy, and respect for diverse experiences. When a joke feels out of step with those values, it doesn't come across as funny. It comes across as disconnected or, worse, disrespectful. And they probably won't tell you. They'll just laugh politely, then avoid getting too close. You'll feel the distance, but maybe not understand where it came from. Now, that doesn't mean you have to walk on eggshells. It doesn't mean humor is off limits, but it does mean thinking twice before you default to certain kinds of jokes. Ask yourself, is this funny because it's clever, or because it puts someone else down? The best kind of humor, especially in older age, is the kind that lifts people up, that brings lightness, not discomfort, that shows you're not stuck in the past, but evolving right along with everyone else. In fact, nothing builds connection faster than being able to laugh at yourself. It shows humility. It shows perspective. It shows that you're not trying to prove anything. You're just here to enjoy the moment with others. Acting helpless when you're not getting older brings real challenges. No one's denying that. There are things that used to come easy that now take more time, more care, sometimes more help. But there's a difference between needing help and defaulting to it when you don't have to. And over time, that difference becomes something people notice more than they'll ever admit. Maybe you've gotten used to saying, "Can you just do it for me?" Or, "I don't know how any of this works. I'll mess it up anyway." At first, those requests feel innocent. But when they become habits, especially for things you're still capable of doing, they can quietly start to wear on the people around you. Family members might start feeling like caretakers, even when you're perfectly able. Friends may notice that they're always the ones lifting, reaching, fixing, organizing. And though they might smile and say, "No problem," inside they begin to feel something else. Resentment. What's even more complex is that sometimes this behavior is subconscious. It's not laziness, it's fear. Fear of doing it wrong. Fear of looking silly. Fear of not keeping up. So you let someone else step in. And with each little surrender, your independence slips just a bit more. But here's the truth. People admire effort more than perfection. They'd rather see you try and struggle a little than give up altogether. Your children, your grandchildren, even your neighbors, they feel proud when you show you're still in the game, that you still want to learn, move, participate. And when you ask for help only when you truly need it, they trust you more. They don't feel like they're being manipulated or taken for granted. They feel honored to step in because they know it comes from a place of honesty, not habit. Maintaining your sense of agency isn't about pretending you're 30 again. It's about showing up with what you can do, asking clearly for what you can't, and respecting the line between the two. Pretending you're always right. We all like to feel we've earned our place at the table, especially after decades of life experience, hard choices, and lessons learned the long way. So it's understandable that at a certain point, many older adults feel like they've got the answers, that they've seen enough to know how things work. And in many cases, they do. But here's where it gets tricky. When the need to be right overshadows the need to connect, people stop listening. It might show up in small ways. Correcting someone's story at dinner, insisting your way of doing something is the only way that makes sense, rolling your eyes at new ideas, or brushing off someone else's opinion with, "Trust me, I know better." At first, others may shrug it off. They might even laugh. But over time, being around someone who always has to be right becomes exhausting. People start avoiding meaningful conversations. They withhold their thoughts. They stop challenging you, not because you convinced them, but because it's just easier to stay quiet. The irony is, many older folks don't do this to be arrogant. They do it to feel safe, to feel like they still have authority in a world that's changing quickly around them. But when being right becomes more important than being kind or curious, it backfires. Being wise doesn't mean having all the answers. It means knowing when to offer your perspective and when to let someone else explore theirs. It means holding your opinions with confidence but also with openness. Because here's the truth most people don't say out loud. The people we admire most aren't the ones who correct us. They're the ones who listen, reflect, and gently invite us to think differently without forcing it. When you stop trying to win every discussion, people actually start coming to you more. They ask your opinion. They value your feedback, not because you dominate the room, but because your words carry calm, thoughtful weight. Dismissing new technologies in our rapidly evolving world. Technology has become interwoven with nearly every aspect of daily life. From smartphones and social media to smart home devices and digital payment systems, the technological landscape is constantly shifting. For many older adults, this pace of change can feel overwhelming, even threatening. A common response to this discomfort is dismissal. "I don't need all those gadgets. In my day, we managed just fine without computers." All this technology is making people antisocial. While there's validity in questioning how technology affects our lives, outright rejection can unintentionally create barriers between you and younger generations. When you refuse to learn even basic digital skills or mock others for their device usage, you may be inadvertently signaling that you've checked out of modern life. Family members notice when you consistently ask them to handle every technical task, from setting up email to ordering something online. They see when you wave away explanations with, "I'm too old to learn that stuff." And while they may accommodate you, these moments accumulate into a perception that you're unwilling to adapt. What's particularly challenging is that technology has become a primary means of connection. Photos are shared digitally, family news travels through messages, and social events are planned online. When you opt out completely, you're not just rejecting devices, you're potentially missing meaningful ways to stay connected to loved ones. The healthier approach isn't becoming a tech expert. It's maintaining a willingness to engage with the parts of technology that matter most to your relationships. Learning to video call with grandchildren, mastering basic texting, or understanding how to view shared photos shows that you value staying connected more than you fear the unfamiliar. Resisting environmental changes. As environmental awareness has grown in recent decades, so have everyday practices meant to reduce waste, conserve resources, and protect natural spaces. Recycling, reducing single-use plastics, conserving water and energy, these have shifted from fringe behaviors to social norms. Yet some older adults find themselves resistant to these changes, seeing them as unnecessary complications to familiar routines. You might catch yourself dismissing recycling efforts as too much trouble, leaving lights and appliances running unnecessarily, or using excessive packaging when simpler options exist. Perhaps you continue practices that younger generations have learned are harmful to ecosystems, like using certain pesticides in your garden or improperly disposing of hazardous materials. What you may not realize is how closely younger generations tie environmental responsibility to moral character. When they observe resistance to even simple environmentally friendly practices, they don't see it merely as indifference. they interpret it as a lack of concern for their future and the world they'll inherit. This perception can create silent tension in families and communities. Your grandchildren might notice you throwing recyclables in the trash, but say nothing. Your neighbors might observe your lawn care practices with concern, but avoid confrontation. These small moments accumulate into a narrative about whether you care about the world beyond your immediate comfort. Adapting doesn't require becoming an environmental activist. Simple adjustments, turning off unused lights, basic recycling, reducing water waste, signal that you understand the world is changing and that you care about the legacy you leave. When you make even modest efforts, it demonstrates that you're thinking beyond yourself and your lifetime. Final thoughts now that we've gone through these 14 behaviors. Take a moment to reflect gently, without judgment. Which of these habits have quietly crept into your daily life? Which ones caught you by surprise? And which do you feel ready to shift, even if just a little? This article wasn't meant to shame or criticize. It was created to give you something most people don't. Honest insight wrapped in care. Because the truth is, these behaviors don't make you a bad person. They're simply blind spots, things that settle in over time without us noticing. And once we do notice, that's when real strength shows. Not in pretending they don't exist, but in saying, I see it. I can do better. I still have the power to grow. That's what aging well is really about. Not clinging to the past, not resisting change, but stepping into each new day with self-awareness, grace, and the quiet strength of someone who still wants to connect, evolve, and be a source of warmth in other people's lives. So as you move forward, keep these signs in mind, not as a checklist, but as gentle reminders. Ways to keep showing up in the world with dignity, presence, and the kind of character that leaves others feeling respected, comfortable, and inspired. And remember, it's never too late to shift how you move through the world. Small changes in how you speak, listen, dress, joke, or interact can completely transform how people experience you and how you experience your own place in the world. The journey of aging gracefully isn't about perfection. It's about continuous growth, authentic connection, and the courage to see ourselves clearly, especially when no one else will tell us what they see. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important.